Good afternoon, everybody. Bonjour. Today is the day I am going to show you how to peyote stitch a hat brim. This is how I do it. This is how I'm a self-taught beater. So, I'm not saying this is the only method or the method how to do it, but this is how I do it, and this is how I taught myself. And before we do that, I'm going to show you how to peyote stitch just a basic edge, because you're going to need to know how to do that before you jump into the hat game. So we'll just start with this piece of Pellon, and then we'll jump into the hat, and we'll go from there. Okay, for just beating this piece of Pellon, I've made 2 marks. These are going to be representing the thread line on the hat, the same thread line that I followed all the way around the bill. This is just going to be a representation of that on both sides. You can see the line there. So before I started, I put you can see a nice knot in my fire line. I did about 6 turns on it and then tightened it up. You want the knot to be pretty big so it doesn't pull through the bill or the Pellon or whatever you're beading onto. With peyote stitch, you're going to create a lot of tension as you pull your beads, so it's going to want to pull this knot, pull at the knot really hard. So you want to make sure it's very secure and isn't going to go anywhere so you don't lose your stitch. But before I started on the hat, I ran my needle through the bill a couple times just to secure the knot. I went 3 times. It's just going through. Up and through a few times just to make sure there's a lot of tension and for that to hold. So the thread line I'm following, or just the line in general, you want to make sure that you're always going through consistently. So on this line, I'm going to shoot for the very edge the whole time. I don't want to come up the high end or too low. I always want to end up right on the edge. So I'm going to start there, right on the very edge. As you can see. And then the other side. You know, it's right on the outside edge. Bring it up. And don't worry about your knot here. This is going to get hidden in the stitch anyway, so you won't see any work showing here. Get my beads over. Okay, with the way I measured this, it's the same. It's almost the same as the thread line on the hat. This is going to be two beads more. This is going to be a 21 bead peyote on this because of it's a 1/4 inch, and that's how many beads fit around. So I'll load my beads, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got 21 beads loaded onto my thread here. What I'm going to do is just come around, poke it through the existing hole at the edge of that first hole we already started, come up through, then we'll just pull some tension on the beads. Okay, the reason I use odd count in my peyote on edging is because I like to have a center bead, and then you can make your designs here on both sides, and they'll both reflect each other. Okay, so coming up through the bottom there, you're going to want to go through your first bead. See that? Come through. Okay, just pull Pull a little tension there. Pull it down. I'm just going to alternate white here. We're going to go white on this row here. And this is just in typical peyote fashion. From your first bead, you're going to skip a bead, go through a bead. Just like that. Kind of hard to see, but you got your bead there. Okay, we're going to just repeat that process. Skip a bead. Oops. Grab a bead. And we'll skip a bead. And through a bead. Just keep going until you get to the end. It's going to look a little funky at the beginning. Keep on pushing through. Grab a bead, skip a bead, and through the bead. Always the same process, over and over and over. Through the bead. Okay, and if you've done it correctly, when you get to the end, you should be going through your final bead there. Here. As you can see, you come through the very last bead here. Then we'll just go back through the hole again, that first hole. As you can see here. Just go right through it, and we want to come out right at the same spot we did this other one, as you can see. We'll come through. Okay, and the way I've been carrying, I call it carrying my stitch over. Instead of going at a 45-degree angle, sometimes, well, most times, you'd come through and you'd go at a 45 to offset your bead. But instead, I found it easier with the hat, just carrying your stitch over one bead width. Now this is, you kind of just got to know your beads, and I use 11/0 a lot, so I know how far to properly gauge the distance there. So bring it over one bead's width. Pull it tight, and you can see how it's nice and tight there. Okay. So when you get over to this end, as you can see it's kind of a ladder here. One bead, two bead, one bead, two bead, one bead. This is where it gets easy. You just fill in the gaps. So since we're alternating white and orange, I'll just stick a white here. And this will be the first bead on your second row. And just keep cruising around, keep going through, just fill in the gaps. You'll see this gap here, and you'll just run your needle through the beads that are like little ears or tabs, you know, right here, and just keep like this. Super simple. Kind of culling my beads as I go here. I'm pretty particular about using same size beads. When you're using check beads, you gotta cull them or just sort through them so you have consistent beads. They're all misshapen. That's the beauty of the check bead, I believe. If you happen to use Japanese, it'll be a lot easier because they're all pretty much uniform for the most part. You can just grab and go. Okay. Then when you get to the end, string your last bead, and it's going to go through. I don't know if you can see it, but right here's that. See how your thread carries over? Right through that hole. You're going to come up right under the existing bead on the second row. And you're going to come through that bead. And boom. As you can see, just continue. You got a space here, so it's going to go bead through, bead through, bead through, all the way around again. Just keep repeating that process. Once you get this process down, you get the general understanding of how to do it, you'll feel more confident in pursuing a hat. Much more difficult, especially around the corners. When beading around the corners, you really want to keep your tension tight here when you pull your thread up or down, because your radius here on this inner line is smaller than the outside bill. So your beads are going to want to, instead of being nice and straight, they're gonna lay at a curve. So your design's gonna kind of end up curved instead of a nice straight line. So from here, it's gonna come to here like a little curve instead of a nice straight line. But just keep building. You'll just keep going, and make sure your tensions are tight, so then your beads don't separate through this corner. But they'll pull extremely tight on the ends. As you can see, nice and tight it is in here, and kind of gets a little loosened up there. There you go. You see that right there. Well, you can't even tell, and you can't see any knots or any of that thread that I carried through at all. Nice and clean. So once you get the general understanding of this, you can move to this and much more difficult things. Okay, now that you have a general understanding of basic peyote edging, you can jump into a hat. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So follow me for more. Okay, so finding the center of your bill, there's a couple of ways you can do it. What I did on this one, because the center of the front and the center of the bill are kind of wonky, I'm just going to bead from the center of the bill and just go that way. Sometimes you can split the difference, just depending on your pattern, how much room you're going to have on each side. I won't have any. It's going to be, with this pattern I'm going to make, it's going to go all the way to the edge, so I don't have really any room to spare. So what I did is I just ran a tape, little flexible measuring tape. It's 39 inches from here to here around the bill. So I just went 39 centimeters from there to there, from one side to the other, 19 and a half centimeters in the center. So I found direct center of the bill, and that's where we'll start attaching the beads. Okay, I secured my line into the center of my hat here. What I did is you can see the knot right there. So I tied the end 4 times into a knot and cut it and burned it. So I stuck the needle up through the bill, then back down, and then through all along this center line here. See, I went through, down and in, up through, back down again, and then through the very center. You can see the thread right there. Through the center of the bill and came up through the top. That way it's kind of snaked through the bill a little bit, and it helps hold the line a little extra tight. So that is how you start your thread. Next I'll show you how to load your beads according to your pattern. Okay, so what I did was bring my beads around and stick my needle up through the hole in the center, back through the top, snugged the beads up tight, and ran my needle through my first bead there. Okay, and in typical peyote fashion, we're going to start adding our beads. We're going to skip a bead, through a bead, skip a bead, through a bead, building our pattern until we get to the other side and have to come up through again through the hat. Okay, so I've added my first row, and as you can see, it's kind of got this little crosshatch pattern here. See, it's 1 bead, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way around. So before I put my needle through and back up through the hole, I wanted to show you. So that's the end. We'll go right back through the hole to the top, through the hole that the center hole, very center hole. And instead of creating a hole at an angle to come up next to this bead, I'll show you an easier way. So we'll pull our thread through. See, and as you can see, we're back through the top of the hat. We're not going to go through the beads. What we're going to do is we're going to bring our thread over, our needle over 1 bead width on the thread line. That's what I'm beading. That's going to be my guideline, is the thread line. So I'm going to bring my needle over 1 bead width and go through the bill, and then we're going to build up from the bottom. Add a bead, skip a bead, add a bead, skip a bead. And we're just going to repeat that process over and over and over and over 1,000,000 times until we get to there. Then we'll come back and we'll build this side. Okay, so as you can see, I've built out a little bit on both sides here, just so we can identify the pattern a little better. Top and bottom. See, it's real clean. Everything's nice and tight. I'm at the end of my thread here. So basically, from the last step, we just kept building, coming across, following our pattern. And that's basically all you do. You just rinse and repeat until you get to the very end here. So I'm going to show you how I add my new thread. Let's get this. Alright, I got the needle on my thread. Trusty leather, and find your bead width, poke it through, still following that thread line, both sides, top of the thread there, bottom of the thread there. So come out, pull this through. Alright, so we're ready to start a new row with our string that's already that we're going to end here. So I'm going to add a new string. What I'm going to do, since we ended on the bottom of the hat, we're going to thread the needle. Got my new thread here. Alright, I'm gonna do a hole just off of the where the previous thread is coming out. I'm gonna go through the bill and then back through the hole, so that both threads are coming out the same hole. Just a little bit up here. And you're not going to see this. This is going to get buried in the work just like everything else. Be careful of that. The leather is getting soft. Piece of leather. Okay, so we got the needle through the top. Just gonna pull it all the way through to my knot, then just pass it right back down through that previous hole. Okay, so now we got, as you can see, we got both threads coming through that hole, and we're just going to keep building. But now we're just going to build with 2 threads. I'm going to do about 2 rows with this short thread so that I can keep good tension on both through the stitch. So I'll go ahead and do that. Then I'll show you how I tie down my thread and buried in the work, and then just keep building on that. Alright. So since adding my new thread, I went around and I did 2 rows with the same thread. So I would do, with my short row, I would do my beads and then weave the new string through. I did that 2 times around the bill. That way I can maintain tension and keep it nice and tight. So what I'm going to do with this short string here is just buried in the work. I'm going to tie it, show you how I do it. So I brought it around so my thread is on the top of the bill before I add a bead, so I'm just going to bring my thread up off the line and stick it through the bill, come back up, tie it off, and you won't even see it. It's going to be buried right in the work. So let's do that real quick. So just come off the line a little bit into the where the work is going to lie. Shove your needle through. I'll just bring it right through here. Okay. So before pulling the tension too tight, I want to leave a little bit of loop on this front side. And I'll show you why here in a second, so you can tie it off. So you're going to bring it back through. Pretty close to your other hole. You don't have to be spot on, but go back through, up. Closer than that. Let's see. Okay. Just into near that loop, as you can see. Pull the needle through this time. Okay. Don't want to lose that needle. Stick that over here. Alright, so you can see I have a little bit of a loop here. And then the remaining thread. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loop this string through the loop 3 times. Not that one. This short string here. So just run it through that loop 3 times. Go 1, 2, 3, and then just yank it down. It's going to be nice and tight. You can kind of see the knot there, but it's going to be buried in the beads. You won't even see it. So I just grab my scissors. Trim it off. Then I'll burn that with a lighter a little bit. Be real careful with it. And just keep on working through. I'm just going to keep building. And that's how I switch threads. Easy peasy. Okay folks, so I hope everything I just showed you helps you in your pursuit of peyote stitching a hat. I haven't quite figured the ends out yet, so I didn't post about it. I will when I get some further experience on them. Right now I'm just kind of winging it. But what I just gave you should get you started. It's got me this far. Hopefully it helps you out. Good luck and keep beating. Much love.